Good morning, Broncos fans and Broncos country. Welcome to another edition of Legends of Mile High. And I am sorry to say that I am by myself again. So hopefully I can add all the streams uh, appropriately this morning without any technical difficulties. We shall see. So give me just a moment while I do that, and then we will jump right into it. I am Thomas Hall, as always, bringing you Legends of Mile High, where we talk about a lot of history and current events. And today, history was made with our own favorite DeMarcus Ware going into the Hall of Fame, which is incredible, awesome. He should have been in last year, but we'll talk about a little bit about that. And we're also going to dive into some historical data to talk about running backs in free agency, because we just saw Josh Jacobs and Sean Payton kind of talking about, coming to the Denver Broncos. So let's just talk about that a little bit. And I'm a little weary of I have some reservations about bringing paying big money to someone like Josh Jacobs. So let's jump into the show first by grabbing some comments. So first we have Jeremy Sean coming in this morning. Thank you for that, Jeremy. Appreciate it. And Jeremy says, "Morning, Thomas. Congrats to D Ware on the Hall of Fame. Nice orange shirt. Too bad Jerry tried to make it about himself." Yeah, Jerry Jones is that type of guy, so I can imagine that that wouldn't be any different. And he, DeMarcus Ware is definitely a Dallas Cowboy. I mean, he spent most of his career there. So I still view him as a Dallas Cowboy, but he does have a special place in my heart because he was more than just a sack master or defender for the Denver Broncos. He was a very important, very key leader within the Denver Broncos Super Bowl run, and I will jump into that in a little bit as well. So, Jeremy, thank you for coming in. Dom, good morning. Appreciate you coming in here this morning from Facebook. Thanks very much. Dom says, "Good morning, Thomas in Broncos country. I got shin splints yesterday at work, so they sent me home, but I'm back here again this morning. The grind never stops. Denver Broncos for life." Man, I'm sorry you got shin splints. I had those, a long time ago when I was running track, and I'm not a very fast runner, so definitely more long distance. But yeah, those things hurt. So hopefully you heal up quickly and you're back at it. And if you're a runner or whatever, that you're back doing that right away. So thank you for coming in this morning, Dom. I appreciate it. I appreciate you seeing here. Appreciate seeing you here every morning, just about. So thank you. Thank you very much. And Dave Glassman is also coming in with orange and blue hearts. Thank you very much, Dave. Appreciate your support. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate that you join early in the morning on these Fridays. I know it's not the best time slot for everybody, but that was the one that I had. So we went with it, and I hope you enjoy the show. So thanks for coming in, Dave. And then we have Clayton Huron also coming in from Facebook. Man, appreciate you being here, Clayton. I like seeing you in the comments. And Clayton says, "Morning, Broncos country. Smash that like button and share." Yeah, please do. This is a unique show. And it's not a real news breaking type show, which gets a lot of the views. So I really appreciate any support you can give the show to keep it rolling. I've got two other shows coming up. I'm on Saturday nights with Ron White on the Orange and Blue View podcast, and then I recently just joined as the co-host for Mile High Insiders on Wednesday night. So those two shows are, definitely in better time slots, so to speak, and, bring in a lot more eyes. But I love the show, and I don't want to have to, dump this show to focus on those two. So if you guys can bring the support for this show in the way of super chats or Facebook stars, I'd very much appreciate it. So Clayton, thank you for coming in this morning. And we've got Michael Ronquillo, the Facebook Stars champion, coming in with a "Good morning, Thomas Hall and Legends of Mile High. Go Broncos." And he also says, "I am happy for DeMarcus Ware making it the Hall of Fame class of 2023. Michael, thank you for the support, man. I really appreciate all the support that you give me and Mile High Huddle. This is Legends of Mile High, and I'm Thomas Hall. You can follow me on Twitter at Thomas Hall NFL. And again, don't forget to like the show and share it. Share it with your friends. Let's get some more Denver Broncos history lovers in the house and start listening, because we are going to talk a little bit about history today, for sure. It's talking about running backs and the historical impact they've had in free agency for the Denver Broncos. It's pretty interesting. So stick with me. And we have Mac 85 City coming in saying good morning. Well, good morning to you, Mac. I have not seen you on here before, so welcome to Legends of Mile High, a podcast where we talk about history and some current events, and we try and blend those two and make it a fun show. I'm a real big proponent of keeping the history of the great franchise of the Denver Broncos alive. I know we've had some rough patches watching the Denver Broncos the last few years, but you could, this franchise is rich with history, had a great run of success, and we are hoping to bring that back. But at the same time, we want to continue to talk about those players who made it great, who started it all, who was there during the heydays of the 80s and the 90s, and that's what we're going to do. And we've got Quentin Caldwell. Quentin Caldwell, good morning. Thank you for coming in from YouTube. Man, I appreciate you being here. And Quentin says, good morning, everyone. So good morning to you. And we have Eric coming in, Eric Sponhorst saying, go Broncos from Facebook. Thank you so much for the support and coming in from Facebook, Eric. Really appreciate that. And we've got Clayton Huron coming back in saying, I tell you what, guys, I'm loving what Sean is doing, cleaning the house and his way or the highway. I love it. Yeah, Clayton, thank you for that. And let's talk about that a little bit before we jump into to talking about DeMarcus Ware. Let's talk a little bit about the running back situation for the Denver Broncos. And, we kind of seen, we watched on the Super Bowl week build up to the Super Bowl. Sean Payton was there with Josh Jacobs, and a little bit of talking back and forth going on whether or not he'd become a Denver Bronco. And I have an article coming out on milehighhuddle.com. I did an analytical study based on players who played from 1998 to 2019. And I based it on age and whether their ability to start games diminishes over time, and whether their ability to garner awards like Pro Bowls or All Pros diminishes over time. And obviously they do. I mean, as people age, they don't get as they're not as good, so to speak. Their body can't hold up as well. So we're going to dive into that a little bit. But first, I'm going to give a shout out to Gary Palmer coming in with the super chat. Thank you so much, Gary. Appreciate it. We want to keep this support rolling, so this show continues to keep rolling. So Gary comes in and says, good morning, Thomas and Broncos country. Yeah, thank you for that, Gary. And any support I can get is wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about the running back situation. So Broncos are obviously going to need to bring in somebody. Latavius Murray is, he is a one and done deal, so they can try and bring him back. But most of the running backs that were on the roster are unrestricted free agents or injured. So that's leaving the cupboard pretty bare, so to speak. So they're going to need to do something in free agency. And I love the Quentin Caldwell comment here. I'd love to hate Josh Jacobs. Yeah, that's the big name right now, right? The big name. Everyone's saying, let's go out and get Josh Jacobs because he had a great year. But guess what? He's going to be 26. And based on all the analytics I've done, the running back position peaks at 26. And Josh Jacobs may have had his peak season last season. He had a really good season. But after 26, after that season, man, running backs start to drop off the cliff. It is an incredible graph, and I wish Scott's not here, so I wish I knew how to bring the graph into the frame to show you, but check out the article that's probably going to be published today, and you will see the graph. It is a drop-off. By the time they're 28, they're starting about 60% of the games, and their ability to garner that attention for awards just it takes a nosedive. So that sweet spot for running backs is really to get them at 25, get that peak season. And really, if the Broncos are going to try and go after Josh Jacobs, they're going to have to be very careful with how much money they give him and how long of a deal they give him. And he's going to be garnering some pretty good money based on what he did. But I've always said this when it comes to free agency. It should not be a reward for what a player has done. I mean, this is a business of winning football games. It shouldn't be a reward for what they've done in the past. It should be an incentive or a down payment on what they're going to do in the future. And running backs usually don't produce in free agency. So there's a few names out there that you can go for, right? There's a few names out there that are going to be lower risk, so to speak, because you're not going to put as much money out there. So I'm going to grab this other comment from just Facebook user. I don't know who it is, but thank you for coming in, Facebook user. It says, good morning, go Broncos. There is rumors of Barkley or Jacobs, but I don't think we have the cap room for either. What do you think? And that's what I'm talking about, right? The Broncos have a lot of holes to fill on this roster. And if they're going to spend it on a running back, a big chunk of it on a running back, I think that's very misguided. So I appreciate this comment, because it's very significant to what the Broncos are dealing with. So if they're going to pay big money to Josh Jacobs, and they're only going to get maybe one, maybe two at most really good seasons out of him, and before he starts to decline, that's a big risk to take, especially when you look at the data and it says running backs typically drop off the cliff at 26. Really, it's not 30. I mean, 30 is what everybody says, that 30 is really the time. But it's not. I mean, they start to decline much sooner than that, and it's the wear and tear on the body, and that's just what happens. And I'll tell you that this study isn't just the analytics I did on this isn't just running backs that are in the league. These are running backs that started at least 60% of their games in the first 3 seasons of their career. This is players that were starters, and every other position seems to stick around a little bit longer and play at a higher level for a little bit longer. But running back does not. Running back, it's a rough position to have to play, and it takes a wear and tear on the body for sure. So for me, if I'm gonna go after running backs, I'm not going to risk a lot of money to do it. And so there's some other options out there. I mean, Saquon Barkley is going to be a big ticket item as well, but there's some other names like Alexander Madison. I mean, someone that you don't even think about really, that didn't have a massive season, but he's in that age group where you give him a couple year contract, not too much, he could produce for you. Same with Devin Singleton and David Montgomery. I mean, these are two players who have done pretty well. I mean, they're not the Josh Jacobs, getting 1,500-1,600 yards a season, but they still have some tread on their tires, and they're young enough that it's worth taking the risk, and it's not going to be a huge amount of money. That's the thing. It's not going to be a big amount of money to risk. So that's why you go for it. That's why you would bring someone like that in over a big money item like Josh Jacobs. And I'm going to tell you another little tidbit of information. So I looked back at all of the running backs who came to the Denver Broncos after playing for somebody else in their history. And I'm going to give you the top 5 running backs of all time who played for some other team and then arrived in the Denver in the Mile High City here, and what they produced. And I'm going to tell you, the number 1 running back is going to make everybody cringe, because we just watched him fumble away games. Melvin Gordon is the best running back the Denver Broncos have ever acquired from another team through free agency or even trades, right? Melvin Gordon, he had 2,222 yards in basically 2.5 seasons and 19 touchdowns. That was a big amount of money to give someone who really just kind of put the ball on the ground and lost games. So that to me is pretty telling of being very, very worried about giving money to a running back that in free agency for the Broncos. And I'll give you the next 4 in just a moment. We got Ladies Farm coming in. Thank you for coming to this comment. Good morning, Broncos country, Eastern Kentucky here. Great. I've been to Kentucky, man. I went to Lexington, Kentucky back in the day when I was doing some M&A and site location when I was younger. And I liked Lexington. I know that I think it gets a bad rep, but I actually enjoyed being in Lexington. Thought it was fun, cool place, and man, Kentucky is a beautiful state. It really is. The horse racing country out there, and it's wonderful. So thank you for coming in from Eastern Kentucky. Not as early as here, but thank you for joining in. And we have another comment from Quentin Caldwell, and he says, "Right, you're all are right. The running backs would be too much money." Yeah, and that's what we're talking about here. So I'm going to give you a couple more of the historical Broncos who were brought in from another team. So the next on the list, the next best after Melvin Gordon is Willis McGahee, 1,930 yards and 8 touchdowns in 2 seasons. That's pretty decent production for 2 seasons, right? But that was a time when that didn't really matter. I mean, Willis McGahee didn't move the needle for the Broncos, really. So another running back that they brought in that really didn't produce. And then the third one, this is the running back that I used to describe a few running backs in the league, and this is Gaston Green. The Gaston Green effect, I call it, which was, it's funny. Gaston Green had 1,685 yards and 6 touchdowns in 2 seasons for the Denver Broncos. He's the third best running back that they acquired. Now, Gaston Green is funny because I call it Gaston Green effect when I describe running backs who are unpredictable. You can't make a game plan around, because Gaston Green would be one of those running backs who would get a yard or lose a yard, or, maybe get stuffed right at the line. And then, all of a sudden goes on a 65-yard run for a touchdown. Well, that's really infuriating for offensive coordinators, because they can't rely on them. They can't go, okay, now's the time to go get that, 30 or 40-yard run. It's usually stuffed, and then once in a while the big runs, and that's why I mean that's how I kind of describe Philip Lindsay at times. Is that was a similar type, not as bad as Gaston Green, but it's a player that came in free agency or trade. I can't remember if it was a trade, but he took over the role for Bobby Humphrey when he was holding out, and he had one big year, 1,000 yards, first 1,000-yard season, had a big, several touchdown game for the Broncos, and then just was, pretty much back to normal. So that's the third best pickup from the Broncos. So it's pretty darn disheartening to look at this list. We've got Adam Baumgartner coming in from Facebook saying, "Good morning, Thomas." Thank you, Adam. It's good to see you here. Appreciate it. And Jeremy Sean is coming with a bright spot, saying, "Looking on the bright side, maybe Melvin's fumbles led us to Sean Payton." Well, I mean, thank you for thinking positive. That's great. It was terrible to watch in time, but maybe you're right, because sometimes there are things that happen. Josh McDaniels really led to Peyton Manning, I think. And, even though that was an awful 2-year period, it did get Peyton Manning into the Mile High City. So maybe you're onto something. Maybe it was a good thing that he fumbled for the future. So who knows? We'll see. I'm excited, but I'm not too excited, because I want to see what happens on the field. Now, the fourth best running back, and this guy was a pretty good running back for the Broncos, which is Reuben Jones. He spent some time with the team, and he never got his shot. And then, of course, he's one of those unknown, no-name running backs that came in and had a 1,000-yard season for the Broncos. Back when it was the zone blocking scheme, and Tom Nalen was the center. And I got it's Hall of Fame. I got my Tom Nalen sweatshirt hoodie on. He is Hall worthy. Now that the Hall of Fame has been named, it's time to start to put the pressure on to get Tom Nalen in the Hall of Fame. So if you love this hoodie like I do, I wear it all the time. You can go get one of these. I designed it myself. It's just go to Tom Nalen for the Hall of Fame on Bonfire, and you'll find it. It's and the link's on my Twitter, pinned to my Twitter. So the money goes split evenly between St. Jude and the push for Tom Nalen for the Hall of Fame. It takes some money to get the name out there. So, offer some support to Tom Nalen for the Hall of Fame. I love Tom Nalen. I think he deserves it. But Reuben Jones, he's a decent running back, but that's another pickup that they got that, what was it here for a little while and then gone. And then finally, an old timer, Wendell Hayes, played 1 season for another team, came to the Broncos, spent 3 seasons with the Denver Broncos, had 1,198 yards and 10 touchdowns. Those are your top 5 of Broncos that were acquired from another team. So when the Broncos are looking to go out into free agency and get a running back, which they have to get at least one because the cupboard is bare, like I said, that's what you're risking. A running back who's on the decline and going to take up some of your cap space. So choose wisely, and I think it should be somebody not named Josh Jacobs or Saquon Barkley, somebody who isn't going to require as much money, and they should go into the draft trying to find it. Now I know Latavius Murray earned another shot, and if he comes back with a good season on a low dollar deal, perfectly fine. But I wouldn't spend a lot of money on him. He's older, and I loved watching him play. I mean, he did a great job this year, but and he did earn at least someone to talk to him about returning. But you got to be careful with the big money. Big money on him is definitely not prudent. Albert Knoppers, thank you for coming in from Facebook, man. I appreciate seeing you here, Albert. It was great meeting you. Says morning, Thomas, and he also comes back in to say good morning to everyone on the chat. So jump into the chat. Let's get some more comments going, and let's talk a little bit more about whatever you want to talk about. Tom Naylor for Hall of Fame. I'm down. I'm going to jump into DeMarcus Ware. But if you have any more comments about the Broncos running back situation and the hype about Josh Jacobs, let me know what your thoughts are. Roy Osborne, thank you for coming in from Facebook. I appreciate you. Appreciate the support. Roy says, good morning, Thomas. I truly believe if Peyton can fix the O-line, you fix Russ. Spend money on the O-line. Well, I agree with you, Roy. That is a great point. Thank you for saying that. It is true. The Russ needs a better offensive line. So instead of spending the money on a running back, which I know people, there's a lot of nostalgia for these great running backs to rack up yardage, but Russ takes more time to throw. It's a fact. He just does. And he needs a little bit more time. So we watched the Broncos offensive line get decimated by injuries. They were down to like third string players there for a while coming in. And you could see that there were times where it was just a free for all, the defensive team just busting through the line and coming after Russell Wilson. So, but when we saw him get some time, he was able to do something. So that's good. So great. I mean, I would spend the money on the offensive line too, because they're going to need to fill up that offensive line. They're going to need to bring in at least 3 players, either through the draft or free agency. Before I get into that, I'm going to grab Paul Swallow here. Thank you, Paul, for coming in. Good morning from Spokane, Washington. Go Broncos. I love Spokane, Washington. I grew up in Eastern Oregon on a ranch, and I have the mustache, the cowboy mustache. I don't know how long it's going to stay, but yeah, I was, grew up on a ranch in Eastern Oregon. I spent some time in Spokane and Eastern Washington. It's a beautiful part of the state. Thank you for coming in, Paul. But back to the comment about the offensive line, they're going to have to take that money and go look for a right tackle and a center and a guard, most likely. They have to, and at least with the offensive line, you can take a risk on an older player, because at 34, go check out the other article I have on Mile High Huddle about the offensive line. At 34, they sometimes have a resurgence for a year. So you can even go out and get a player that was really pretty good in his earlier days, and right around that 34 age, they have a bit of a resurgence, and they might be able to find a 1-year fit that solidifies a spot until they can find a draft pick that can come in for the future. So that's a little bit better than trying to find an old running back, for sure. Now, I've got an old name coming in here. The original TD, Tony Dorsett, Eric Sponhorst. If Tony Dorsett would not have been injured in 1988, I think he would have number 1 running back from another team. Yeah, Tony Dorsett, that was a huge deal back in the day. Touchdown Tony. I remember him coming in, and I was super excited to see him joining the team. But yeah, he had 701 yards, I believe, that season, which for Tony Dorsett wasn't that great. But if you look at what was happening before, that was about where he was going to be. He was aging running back. He's a Hall of Famer, and that was a big deal. It was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. I think I actually still might have that Sports Illustrated touchdown Tony coming in. Thank you for that. That's great. I mean, that was an interesting pickup for the Broncos. Dan Reeves was an old Cowboys guy, coached Tony Dorsett, and he was running back himself. And, he thought that was going to be the guy to come in and make his offense run. But that was it. 1 year, 701 yards. I might be off a little bit, but it was 700 yards rushing, and then he was out. And, led to the second TD, the best TD in Broncos country down the road. We got to see, Terrell Davis come in and, become a Hall of Famer. So, those were struggling to find a running back for a long time, ended up with one of the greatest running backs, the greatest playoff running back of all time. Jeremy Sean coming in with a comment: fix the O-line and you don't need a super dynamic back. And that's true. That is so true. You can look at the history of the Broncos O-line, and you look at 1994. They went from 94 to 95. They changed out some of the offensive line. They brought Tom Nalen became the center. They brought in, other right tackle, and all of a sudden they started to have a good running game. And part of it had to do with Terrell Davis. I mean, I can't, there was a perfect marriage, right, between Terrell Davis, the offensive line, and the zone blocking scheme. He was born to play in that role. And, he became one of the greatest, he became the greatest Denver Broncos running back of all time. And his vision was incredible. I put it up there with O.J. Simpson's vision. I mean, he was perfect match. That was just a perfect, perfect running back, offensive line, and scheme all together. And, he became a 2,000-yard running back, probably the best season of any 2,000-yard running back. I keep saying that. I know it wasn't in yards, but he had significantly more touchdowns than any other running back in that club. And he only fumbled twice, only lost 2 fumbles that year. And you go back and you look at Eric Dickerson's, I think he fumbled like 14 times. It's crazy. So, it's the O-line will help the running back situation for sure. Now you got to have a good running back to hit the, be able to see where to run, hit the holes. I don't know. I don't think they're going to be doing the zone blocking scheme this season under Peyton. So, a little bit more power running. So it'll be a little bit, they don't have to have that, vision, so to speak, as, the zone blocking scheme requires. But, we'll see how it goes. But fix the O-line for sure. I got to grab Gabe Rox's comment here. That 88 team was a letdown. Absolutely. They had just gone to back-to-back Super Bowls and lost. And that team was they were tired, man. They were, and they talked about how they were kind of just worn out from those 2 Super Bowl runs. It was a rough year in 88 after having just been, losing to Washington in that second quarter debacle. It was awful, but they bounced back and went back to the Super Bowl again the next year. So it was interesting, but that was a down year. And unfortunately, that led to another Super Bowl run that was difficult to watch again. But luckily they stuck with it, brought in the right coach, and in 97, 98, they won back-to-back championships. So it was tough to watch as a youngster, watching your favorite team lose in the Super Bowl. But man, it was so glorious to watch when Mobley knocked down that 4th down pass against the Green Bay Packers, and knowing that the Broncos were Super Bowl champions. Got a Facebook user coming back in, talking about Williams, Javonte Williams. Williams is a beast, and Murray is good 1-2 punch. Mike Boone is set to be free agent. I think Boone is that good. Stays hurt. I think isn't that good. Stays hurt. Even in Minnesota, he stayed hurt. I say they draft a running back. Yeah, that's a good point, because Javonte Williams is, he had a significant injury. It wasn't just an ACL tear. I mean, this injury was significant, and he may not be his normal self, and he may not be able to return. I know that he's talked about, the recovery is going good, but that's a big question mark, a really big one. That was a devastating injury. So I think you've got to consider that he's not going to be around at least part of the year, or he's not going to be his old self for at least part of the year. So they're going to have to address it and, bring Murray back. I'm okay with bringing Murray back as long as it's a 1-year deal and it's not too expensive. But yeah, they're going to have to find somebody else to fill that other role. I mean, Sean Payton's had some good running backs that he's used quite well, and they need to find at least one in free agency, because they can go to the draft, but they can't spend their whole draft on trying to find a running back. So they're going to have to bring someone in. They're going to have to. So, yeah, it's going to be. I loved Javonte Williams, man. I love the way he ran. He ran with power, and I'm going to miss him. I hope he recovers fully, and we don't see him miss a beat. I hope so. Michael coming back in. Thank you from Facebook. Michael says, former Broncos wide receiver Brandon Marshall has been mentioned as a first ballot Hall of Fame class of 24 in his first year of eligibility. Thoughts, Thomas Hall? Well, thank you. Thank you for redirecting this back to the Hall of Fame. And we'll talk a little bit about DeMarcus Ware, but I'm going to answer this question. Brandon Marshall is an underrated wide receiver in my mind. Underrated. I mean, he for his couple years with the Denver Broncos, he's one of the greatest receivers ever on the Denver Broncos for a couple of years. It was incredible. He could have been considered one of the best in the league at the time for what he did. I mean, look at his stats numbers. It was great. But his antics are going to keep him out of the Hall of Fame, I think. I mean, I don't think his career was so good that like T.O.'s antics ticked people off, right? Terrell Owens. And they made him wait a couple of years to get in, and it kind of ticked him off. And that was a bit of a, I don't know. I mean, whatever the voters want to do, that's up to them. It's unfortunate, but his overall career isn't Terrell Owens like. He's one of those wide receivers who were very, very good in a time where a lot of receivers were very, very good. The stats wise, I'm talking about stats wise. So, and he had those antics that just made people frustrated. So I think the fact that he never really did anything in the postseason, and doesn't have any championships or anything like that, and his antics are going to keep him out of the Hall of Fame. His skill, his ability on the field was very, very good. So I don't think he's definitely not a first ballot Hall of Famer. And with the glut of wide receivers waiting to get in right now. I mean, Andre Johnson is still waiting to get in. A heck of he's definitely a Hall of Famer, but he's still waiting to get in. You got Torrey Holt, you got Reggie Wayne, you got all these other wide receivers who are sitting there in the waiting. Even Henry Ellert still has been waiting for years. He should have been in the Hall of Fame a long time ago. So you've got this long line of wide receivers to get in. And if Brandon Marshall gets in before Rod Smith, I don't know, man. That would be pretty tough to take, because Rod Smith was an incredible receiver, Hall of Fame worthy in my mind. And so if he was a first ballot Hall of Famer, I would be shocked, very shocked. So thank you for that. Thank you for that comment. So let's talk a little bit about DeMarcus Ware, right? I mean, DeMarcus Ware is in the Hall of Fame. He should have been in last year, in my opinion. But, first ballot, second ballot, whatever, it doesn't matter. He's a Hall of Famer. Nobody cares after you get in. There's no plaque that says you got on the first try. So he's a Hall of Famer, and he's well worth it. Well worth being. He's a great player. Number 9 sack leader of all time, official sack leader. I know that there's unofficial stats out there that pushes him down the list a little bit farther, but official stats number 9. That's incredible. And the thing about him coming to the Denver Broncos, he brought a different mentality, for one. And, he brought skill. He was on the decline. His first year he had 10 sacks, and he kind of declined after that in 3 seasons. But what he did for Von Miller as a leader, he helped Von Miller become a better player. And if it wasn't for DeMarcus Ware, I don't think the Broncos would have won Super Bowl 50, because Von Miller was kind of going down the wrong path, right? He and DeMarcus Ware came in and changed his attitude and created another leader for the team. And then we saw Von Miller just wreak havoc in Super Bowl 50 and just tear it up. And I give a lot of credit to DeMarcus Ware for Von Miller's career. Now, Von Miller is wildly talented, And I mean, he's going to be probably first ballot Hall of Famer if he can come back from this knee injury and continue to play and get a few more sacks. He might, if he plays for another 3 years, he's going to be one of the top edge rushers of all time when it comes to sacks. So I give DeMarcus Ware so many kudos for helping him out. Michaela's coming in. Good morning, Michaela. It's nice to see you on here. She says, "Good morning, guys." So, good morning. Thank you for being here this morning, and thank you for the comment. Yeah, so DeMarcus Ware, it's great to see his gold jacket, and he's going to go in as a Cowboy, really, but he did spend some time with the Denver Broncos and got that championship finally. I mean, for all of his great play, the Dallas Cowboys just couldn't get it done. Came to the Denver Broncos and they got it done for him, and he's got a ring, and now he's going to the Hall of Fame. So that's amazing. It's funny to think about, when you think about the Hall of Fame and you calculate how many people are in the Hall of Fame and how many people have played in the NFL, it is less than 1% of all the players that have ever played in the NFL. This is the best of the best, the greatest of the greatest. And I know that I have some issues with how they vote in players sometimes and who they've left out, like Randy Gradishar and Carl Mecklenburg and a few others, and who they put in, that I'm like, kind of, borderline, like Sam Mills and some of those players. But it is an amazing honor, the best of the best. And you could, so many people have come through the NFL and you make it in the Hall of Fame, you're top 1%. And it's amazing. So congratulations to DeMarcus Ware. Well-deserved. And I thank the voters for seeing that and putting him in this year. We've got Gabe Rocks making a comment about watching Miller and Ware jump off the edge was incredible. Can't forget Ware's fake spin reverse sack on Sunday Night Football. Yeah, that was amazing. I remember he tried that out in preseason, right? Tried the fake spin out in preseason and to feel it out, and it worked against a really darn good left tackle. So yeah, that was fun to watch. And it was amazing, how he set, they talk about edge rushers, how they set these blockers up through the game and then to unleash something new on them. And it worked. It was great. Keith Brugman, thank you for coming in from Facebook. Definitely appreciate the support coming in. And he's saying Tom Nalen for Hall of Fame. Absolutely. Tom Nalen for the Hall of Fame. He's Hall worthy. Got the little orange hush over here, I guess on this side. It's number 66. And we are going to try and get the voters to pay more attention to Tom Nalen's career. So I went on, going a little segue here. Folks over at Not in the Hall of Fame do this mock Hall of Fame selection. And it's pretty cool. There's some very, very knowledgeable people in the Hall of Fame that are in that group. The first year I went there, which was 3 years ago, Tom Nalen for the Hall of Fame got one vote, and that was from me. And through that course of that show, I convinced them through talking about what Tom Nalen's done. No, they didn't even, most people never saw him play. They didn't, they didn't have a second thought. But through talking to them and showing them how great he actually was, he was almost in the finals this year. So 3 years later, he was in the top 10. He didn't make the cut for that crew, but it was it was great to see open minds and listening and understanding what he really did. And so that's what I'm going to try and do this year, but on a bigger scale, trying to get Tom Nalen's name out there, his credentials, what he did while he was a Denver Bronco, because that's the thing. He's a small market. Most of the voters didn't really watch him. They don't give him much of a thought. But, in 1998, he probably should have got that all-pro first-team award, 2,000-yard running back. And I've watched all the film except for 2 games. I still can't find 2 games, but he gave up 1 sack in all the games I've watched. That's a pretty darn good season that year. So, he's the greatest center the Broncos have ever had. And frankly, between him and Kevin Mawai, they were the 2 best centers during the time that he played. He should be considered one of the best centers of all time. So Michael Ronquillo wants coming back in time about Mike Shanahan. Michael, thank you for coming in from Facebook. I always appreciate your comments. They're always on point. So Mike Shanahan is a name that has been mentioned for the Hall of Fame class of 2024. Yeah, Mike Shanahan should be in the Hall of Fame. They pushed Bill Cowher through in the Centennial class, and it was kind of a head scratcher to me. And I'm not saying that he's not a Hall of Famer, but when you compare what Mike Shanahan did with the Denver Broncos to the career of Bill Cowher, and Mike Shanahan should have been in before Bill Cowher. It's a head scratcher to me that I think it has to do a little bit with him going to Washington and not doing great there. But nobody does great at Washington. I mean, that's just a dysfunctional franchise. And, any coach that goes there, Joe Gibbs, the Hall of Famer, came back, had a little success, but realized he couldn't do it there either. So, I shouldn't be too much of a black mark. He at least got him back to the playoffs, which most of those coaches that came into the Reds, the Washington, what are they calling themselves now? Commanders. They couldn't get him to the playoffs. So I don't know why that's hurting his career. He's back-to-back champions, got revolutionized the game. He and Alex Gibbs brought the zone blocking scheme into Denver, and it's still, a couple decades later, still a mainstay in the NFL. And just watching that Super Bowl where the Broncos were given no chance to beat the Green Bay Packers, none. I mean, I believe it was the biggest betting deficit betting in Las Vegas, like the worst odds to win the Super Bowl, and to watch the Denver Broncos offensive line push around those big boys for the Green Bay Packers was beautiful to watch. So, it's one of those things that I think his name will get called. There's a few coaches out there that still need to be inducted in the Hall of Fame. So it may not be next year, but I hope it is. He should be at the top of people's lists. Him and Dan Reeves too. Dan Reeves should also be up there. And I know that Broncos country has a little bit of a little bit of negative thoughts to Dan Reeves because of what he wasn't able to get the most out of John Elway. But Dan Reeves was an amazing coach, right? He couldn't put together the team he wanted. He wanted that power running scheme, and he just couldn't find the right running back or the combination of offensive linemen to make that happen. But he still got the Broncos to 3 Super Bowls, a team that was undermatched. And, he coached them into the Super Bowls. And then he went to the Atlanta Falcons and turned that franchise around and got them to the Super Bowl. He's as a player and a coach and assistant coach, he was before Belichick came along, he had more Super Bowl appearances than anybody with 9. So Dan Reeves and Mike Shanahan are 2 Broncos coaches that should be getting some recognition in the Hall of Fame. And hopefully over the next couple of years, that will happen. I think Mike Shanahan will be first. I think it's going to be a struggle to get Dan Reeves in, but Dan Reeves had an ability to find the right coaches to come in and make the team better. And when you look at what makes a great head coach, it's not just being great at, designing plays. It's building a team, and it's taking that team and taking your strategy and making sure everybody is bought in and brings that strategy to life on the field. And he came from a great coaching tree. I mean, he came from Tom Landry and Jim Lee Howell, 2 incredible leaders, credible coaches that passed on that knowledge to him as a leader. And he built some solid teams that just weren't quite good enough to get it done in the Super Bowl. Although I will argue that the Super Bowl against the Giants, if that first half had gone the way they wanted, they would have won that game because there were some miscues. Number one, they were on the 1-yard line and couldn't punch it in, and I think it was bad calls. There's another John Elway tried to force it into Orson Mobley when Steve Watson's in the end zone, nobody around him. Another touchdown, the game would have went in. And then, of course, the bad call with Clarence K. They call it incomplete, and that led to a safety. Then just that first half did not go right. They were moving the ball like crazy against the Giants, and they probably should have went into half at least 24-7, probably 27-7, most likely. That would have changed the face of the game. And I was talking to someone really knowledgeable back then. Said the Giants, great run blockers, but not great pass blockers. And they would pin their ears back and rush to Phil Simms, and that would have been the difference in the game. But, you can't do what ifs and everything. So I just wish it would have went the way it went. We got Mandy Lawson coming in saying, nice stash. It's funny, I was really nervous about shaving my beard off and having a mustache, but so far people have liked it. So I'm going to have to keep it around for a while. So I appreciate you coming in and saying that. I'm getting a lot of comments about it. I really, I'm kind of still like, I don't know, it doesn't look right on me, but people like it. So thank you for that. And then I've got Keith Brugman coming back in. Talk about my favorite forgotten Bronco, Bobby Humphrey. Thought he was the answer for Reeves' running game. Yeah, Bobby Humphrey was one of my favorites too. This is going to be the last comment because I got to really wrap this show up. But yeah, thank you, Keith. Bobby Humphrey came in the supplemental draft, and had some good seasons, right? He really was going to be the answer to that running game. And he looked like it. And coming from Alabama, man, he had a great college career. Everybody thought that he was, was going to be the star. And then he wanted a bigger contract. And Dan Reeves didn't budge. And so he was holding out. They had, and like I said earlier, Gaston Green came in, had a pretty good season. And that was it for Bobby Humphrey. Really, he was gone from the team and never really had a career. If he would have stuck it out, if he would have kept playing in that Dan Reeves offense, he probably would have got a decent contract. He should have just came back, had another good year, and unfortunately, that's what happened. He held out, and that was the end for Bobby Humphrey. And it was disappointing, man. I remember back then thinking, this is it. We finally got the running back that the Broncos need, so we can watch them go to a Super Bowl and actually win the Super Bowl. But it wasn't to be. And thank you for bringing Bobby Humphrey's name back up. This is what this show is all about, bringing those past Broncos, even if they're not legends. I mean, Bobby Humphrey, I wouldn't consider a legend, but, the history of the game is always great to watch. So remember, keep this show alive, support the show if you can with Super Chats and Facebook stars. Like it and tell your friends and family about it. We'll get some more Broncos fans in here. This is a great conversation talking about some of these Broncos of the past. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. We're going to continue to talk more history. I'm going to continue to, I'm thinking about bringing back the Mile High Legend. And I know that this show is, we had a few, a few weeks where we hadn't had it, and I might start bringing back the old ones just because they were fun, and it's fun to talk about those and tell the story the way I really want to tell the story. So stay tuned for that, and we're going to bring some more stuff back for the show, a few other ideas that I have. So stay tuned and catch the other Mile High Huddle show. So thank you very much. Appreciate the comments. Appreciate everyone joining. Appreciate the support. So thank you very much, and go Broncos. And we'll see you next week, same time. Thank you. Have a great day.